Hi guys, it's Wednesday. Welcome to the Wolf's Den. I am your fearless host. Not fearless, I don't know. Yeah, we're just playing around tonight. We're recording on the phone because the laptop has absolutely done what it was supposed to do. I don't know, I got 6 years out of a refurbished laptop, so I hope that's good. I hope it's fixable, but for right now, we are making adjustments. Sorry, I just saw a label. Yeah, so yeah, I'm recording this and I'll be watching it with you guys. So please say hey when you come on board. Not as many updates this week. Just hanging out, doing the thing. I will be at Fright Night Saturday night in Kendallville. If anybody is in Indiana and wants to come see spooky stuff, do Halloween stuff with me, and the Fox himself will be in town. I'm so excited to show him around Kendallville. But yeah, so we are into our supernatural forces section in our Irish fairy tales, courtesy of Foxington Manor. So you can see I've got a different bookmark right there. So we're going to do the story that we're going to do tonight, The Witch's Excursion, is shorter than I thought it was. But the next stories in the sequence are quite a bit longer. So those will be one story nights each the next few Wednesdays. So tonight we're going to read two shorter ones to try to fill our time. And if there's time for a third shorter one, I think the one after that is pretty short. So yes, tonight we're going to start with The Witch's Excursion, and then we're going to read the fate of Frank McKenna. So I hope you guys enjoy these. As always, they are cold, so we're going to stumble over pronunciations together. Hopefully Alan will be watching, and we'll learn some things for next time. Yeah, we're almost done with this book, guys. And then next is on that bookshelf. Are the Nathaniel Hawthorne stories. So we'll be getting into those as we get closer to Halloween. If you have a favorite story, we'll add an extra night and read it between Samhain and Yule. If you have Yule stories that you want me to read, we can add a night. We can put them in place of the Hawthorns and space those out so that book lasts longer. Please check out any updates on Facebook for either here or for the new podcast, The Cozy Coven, which starts next Thursday at 9:00 Eastern. So if you're on the West Coast, it's going to be perfect. You can listen to it during dinner. If you're on the East Coast, you can listen to it while you're winding down for the night. So it'll be great. And it is on an off night from this, so we will be good. So let's go ahead and get started, because I'm just jibber jabbering. And I know some of you guys come here for the jibber jabber, and I appreciate that. I really, really do. It means a lot. But anyway, let's get started tonight with The Witch's Excursion. Seamus, Red James, awakened from his sleep one night by noises in the kitchen. Stealing to the door, he saw half a dozen old women sitting around the fire, jesting and laughing. His old housekeeper, Madge, quite frisky and gay, helping her sister crones to cheering glasses of punch. He began to admire the impudence and imprudence of Madge, displayed in the invitation and the riot. But recollected on the instant her officiousness in urging him to take a comfortable posset, which she had brought to his bedside just before he fell asleep. Had he drunk it, he would have been just now deaf to the witch's glee. He heard and saw them drink his health in such a mocking style as nearly to tempt him to charge them, basin in hand, but he restrained himself. The jug being emptied, one of them cried out, "Is it time to be gone?" And at the same moment, putting on a red cap, she added, "By yarrow and rue, and my red cap too, hie over to England." Making use of a twig, which she held in her hand as a steed, she gracefully soared up the chimney, and was rapidly followed by the rest. But when it came to the housekeeper, Seamus interposed. "By your leave, ma'am," said he, snatching twig and cap. "Ah, you deceitful old crocodile! If I find you here on my return, there'll be wigs on the green. By yarrow and rue and my red cap too, hie over to England." The words were not out of his mouth when he was soaring above the ridgepole and swiftly plowing the air. He was careful to speak no word, being somewhat conversant with witch lore, as the result would be a tumble and the immediate return of the expedition. In a very short time they had crossed the Wicklow Hills, the Irish Sea, and the Welsh mountains, and were charging at whirlwind speed the hall door of a castle. Seamus, only for the company in which he found himself, would have cried out for pardon, expecting to be mummy against the hard oak door in a moment. But, all bewildered, he found himself passing through the keyhole along a passage, down a flight of steps, and through a cellar door keyhole before he could form any clear idea of his situation. Waking to the full consciousness of his position, he found himself sitting on a stillion. Plenty of lights glimmered round, and he and his companions, with full tumblers of frothing wine in hand, hobnobbing and drinking healths as jovially and recklessly as if the liquor was honestly come by. And they were sitting in Seamus's own kitchen. The red bird had assimilated Seamus's nature for the time being to that of his unholy companions. The heady liquor soon got into their brains, and a period of unconsciousness succeeded the ecstasy, the headache, the turning round of the barrels, and the scattered sight of poor Seamus. He woke up under the impression of being roughly seized, and shaken, and dragged upstairs, and subjugated to a disagreeable examination by the lord of the castle in his state parlor. There was much derision among the whole company, gentle and simple, on hearing Seamus's explanation. And, as the thing occurred in the Dark Ages, the unlucky Leinster man was sentenced to be hung as soon as the gallows could be prepared for the occasion. Imagine having to prepare gallows. I don't know how you prepare gallows. I would think in this time, they would have already been built. I don't know. We might have to look that one up. The poor Hibernian was in the cart proceeding on his last journey, with a label on his back and another on his breast, announcing him as the remorseless villain who for the last month had been draining the casks in my lord's vault every night. He was surprised to hear himself addressed by his name, and in his native tongue, by an old woman in the crowd. "Ah, Seamus, Alana, is it going to die you are in a strange place without your capping de yarrag?" These words infused hope and courage into the poor victim's heart, confusion in mine. I don't know what that means. Alan? Help. He turned to the Lord and humbly asked leave to die in his red cap, which he supposed he had dropped from his head in the vault. A servant was sent for the headpiece, and Seamus felt lively hope warming his heart while placing it on his head. On the platform, he was graciously allowed to address the spectators, which he proceeded to do in the usual formula composed for the benefit of flying stationers. "Good people all, a warning take by me." But when he had finished the line, "My parents reared me tenderly," he unexpectedly added, "by yarrow and rue, etc." And the disappointed spectators saw him shoot up obliquely through the air in the style of a skyrocket that had missed its aim. It is said that the Lord took the circumstances much to heart, and never afterwards hung a man for 24 hours after his offense. Yep. Lesson learned. The things we do in haste. Oh, that was a short one. I'm not sure if I feel okay about the ending. Some of these are like that. I don't know. They're fun. I hope you guys are enjoying them. I'm having a good time reading them to you. The other one we're going to read tonight is The Fate of Frank McKenna. There lived a man named McKenna at the hip of one of the mountainous hills which divide the country of Tyrone from that of Monaghan. Yes. This McKenna had 2 sons, one of whom was in the habit of tracing hares of a Sunday, whenever there happened to be a fall of snow. His father, it seems, had frequently remonstrated with him upon what he considered to be a violation of the Lord's Day, as well as for his general neglect of Mass. The young man, however, though otherwise harmless and inoffensive, was in this matter quite insensible to paternal reproof, and continued to trace whenever the avocations of labor would allow him. It so happened that upon a Christmas morning, I think in the year 1814, there was a deep fall of snow, and young McKenna, instead of going to Mass, got down his cockstick, which is a staff much thicker and heavier at one end than at the other, and prepared to set out on his favorite amusement. His father, seeing this, reproved him seriously and insisted that he should attend prayers. His enthusiasm for the sport, however, was stronger than his love of religion, and he refused to be guided by his father's advice. The old man, during the altercation, got warm, and on finding that the son obstinately scorned his authority, he knelt down and prayed that if the boy persisted in following his own will, he might never return from the mountains unless as a corpse. What if we talked about this whole book? If it's not fairies, it's be careful what you wish for. So I know which one we're in, because there's no fairies in this one. The imprecation, which was certainly as harsh as it was impious and senseless, might have startled many a mind from a purpose that was, to say the least of it, at variance with religion and the respect due to a father. It had no effect, however, upon the son, who was said to have replied that whether he ever returned or not, he was determined on going, and go accordingly he did. He was not, however, alone, for it appears that 3 or 4 of the neighboring young men accompanied him. Whether their sport was good or otherwise, it is not to the purpose, neither am I able to say. But the story goes that toward the latter part of the day, they started a larger and darker hare than any they had ever seen, and that she kept dodging on before them bit by bit, leading them to suppose that every succeeding cast of the cockstick would bring her down. It was observed afterwards that she also led them into the recesses of the mountains, and that although they tried to turn her course homewards, they could not succeed in doing so. As evening advanced, the companions of McKenna began to feel the folly of pursuing her farther, and to perceive the danger of losing their way in the mountains, should night or a snowstorm come upon them. They therefore proposed to give over the chase and return home, but McKenna would not hear of it. "If you wish to go home, you may," said he. "As for me, I'll never leave the hills till I have her with me." They begged and entreated of him to desist and return, but all to no purpose. He had appeared to be what the Scotch call fey. That is, to act as if he were moved by some impulse that leads to death, and from the influence of which a man cannot withdraw himself. At length, on finding him invincibly obstinate, they left him pursuing the hare directly into the heart of the mountains and returned to their respective homes. In the meantime, one of the most terrible snowstorms ever remembered in that part of the country came on, and the consequence was that the self-willed young man, who had equally trampled on the sanctities of religion and parental authority, was given over for lost. As soon as the tempest became still, the neighbors assembled in a body and proceeded to look for him. The snow, however, had fallen so heavily that not a single mark of a footstep could be seen. Nothing but one wide waste of white, undulating hills met the eye wherever it turned. And of McKenna no trace whatever was visible or could be found. His father, now remembering the unnatural character of his imprecation, was nearly distracted. For although the body had not yet been found, still by everyone who witnessed the sudden rage of the storm and who knew the mountains, escape or survival was felt to be impossible. Every day for about a week, large parties were out among the hill ranges seeking him, but to no purpose. At length there came a thaw, and his body was found on a snow wreath, lying in a supine posture within a circle which he had drawn around him with his cockstick. His prayer book lay open upon his mouth, and his hat was pulled down so as to cover it and his face. It is unnecessary to say that the rumor of his death, and of the circumstances under which he left home, created a most extraordinary sensation in the country, a sensation that was the greater in proportion to the uncertainty occasioned by his not having been found either alive or dead. Some affirmed that he had crossed the mountains and was seen in Monaghan, others that he'd been seen in Clones, in Emuevale, in 5 Mile Town. But despite all these agreeable reports, the melancholy truth was at length made clear by the appearance of the body as just stated. Now, it so happened that a house nearest the spot where he lay was inhabited by a man named Daly, I think. But of the name I'm not certain, who was a herd or caretaker to Dr. Porter, then Bishop of Clogar. The situation of this house was the most lonely and desolate looking that it could be imagined. The situation of this house was the most lonely and desolate looking that could be imagined. It was at least 2 miles distant from any human habitation, being surrounded by one wide and dreary waste of dark moor. By this house lay the route of those who had found the corpse, and I believe the door of it was barred for the purpose of conveying it home. Be this as it may, the family witnessed the melancholy procession as it passed slowly through the mountains. And when the place and circumstances are all considered, we may admit that to ignorant and superstitious people, whose minds, even upon ordinary occasions, were strongly affected by such matters, it was a sight calculated to leave behind it a deep, if not terrible, impression. Time soon proved that it did so. An incident is said to have occurred at the funeral in fine keeping with the wild spirit of the whole melancholy event. When the procession had advanced to a place called Mullagtinny, a large, dark-colored hare, which was instantly recognized by those who had been out with him on the hills, as the identical one that led him to his fate, is said to have crossed the roads about 20 yards or so before the coffin. The story goes that a man struck it on the side with a stone, and that the blow, which would have killed any ordinary hare, not only did it no injury, but occasioned a sound to proceed from the body resembling the hollow one emitted by an empty barrel when struck. In the meantime, the interment took place, and then and the sensation began, like every other, to die away in the natural progress of time, when, behold, a report ran abroad like wildfire that to use the language of the people. Frank McKenna was appearing. Excuse me. One night, about a fortnight after his funeral, the daughter of Daly, the herd, a girl about 14, while lying in bed, saw what appeared to be the likeness of McKenna, who had been lost. She screamed out, and covering her head with the bedclothes, told her father and mother that Frank McKenna was in the house. This alarming intelligence naturally produced great terror. Still, Daly, who, notwithstanding his belief in such matters, possessed a good deal of moral courage, was cool enough to rise and examine the house, which consisted of only one apartment. This gave the daughter some courage, who, on finding that her father could not see him, ventured to look out, and she then could see nothing of him herself. She very soon fell asleep, and her father attributed what she saw to fear, or some accidental combination of shadows proceeding from the furniture, for it was a clear moonlit night. The light of the following day dispelled a great deal of their apprehensions, and comparatively little was thought of it until evening again advanced, when the fears of the daughter began to return. They appeared to be prophetic, for she said that when night came, that she knew he would appear again, and accordingly at the same hour he did so. This was repeated for several successive nights, until the girl, from the very hardihood of terror, began to become so far familiarized to the spectre as to venture to address it. "Oh, okay. In the name of God," she asked, "what is troubling you? Or why do you appear to me instead of some of your own family or relations?" The ghost's answer alone might settle the question involved in the authenticity of its appearance, being, as it was, on account of one of the most ludicrous missions that ever a spirit was dispatched upon. "I am not allowed," said he, "to speak to any of my friends, for I parted with them in anger. But I'm come to tell you that they are quarreling about my breeches, a new pair that I got made for Christmas Day. And as I was coming up to Thrace in the mountain, I thought the old one would do better, and of course I didn't put the new pair on me. My reason for appearing," he added, "is that you may tell my friends that none of them is to wear them. They must be given in charity." This solemn and serious intimation from the ghost was duly communicated to the family, and it was found that the circumstances were exactly as it had represented them. This, of course, was considered as sufficient proof of the truth of its mission. Their conversations now became not only frequent, but quite friendly and familiar. The girl became a favorite with the spectre, and the spectre, on the other hand, soon lost all his terrors in her eyes. He told her that whilst his friends were bearing home his body, the handspikes or poles on which they carried him had cut his back, and occasioned him great pain. The cutting of the back also was known to be true, and strengthened, of course, the truth and authenticity of their dialogues. The whole neighborhood was now in a commotion with the story of the apparition, and persons incited by curiosity began to visit the girl in order to satisfy themselves of the truth of what they had heard. Everything, however, was corroborated, and the child herself, without any symptoms of anxiety or terror, artlessly related her conversations with the spirit. Hitherto, their interviews had all been nocturnal, but now that the ghost found his footing made good, he put a hearty face on and ventured to appear by daylight. The girl also fell into states of syncope, and while the fits lasted, long conversations with him upon the subject of God, the Blessed Virgin, and heaven took place between them. He was certainly an excellent moralist, and gave the best advice. Swearing, drunkenness, theft, and every evil propensity of our nature were declaimed against with a degree of spectral eloquence quite surprising. Common fame had now a topic dear to her heart, And never was a ghost made more of by his best friends than she made of him. The whole country was in a tumult, and I well remember the crowds which flocked to the lonely little cabin in the mountains, now the scene of matters so interesting and important. Not a single day passed in which I should think from 10 to 20, 30, or 50 persons were not present at these singular interviews. Nothing else was talked of, thought of, and as I can well testify, dreamt of. I would myself have gone to Daly's were it not for a confounded misgiving I had, that perhaps the ghost might take such a fancy of appearing to me as he had taken to cultivate an intimacy with the girl. And it so happens that when I see the face of an individual nailed down in the coffin, chilling and glooming operation, I experience no particular wish to look upon it again. The spot where the body of McKenna was found is now marked by a little heap of stones, which has been collected since the melancholy event of his death. Every person who passes it throws a stone upon the heap, but why this old custom is practiced, or what it means, I do not know, unless it be simply to mark the spot as a visible means of preserving the memory of the occurrence. Daly's house, the scene of the supposed apparition, is now a shapeless ruin, which could scarcely be seen were it not for the green spot that once was a garden, and which now shines at a distance like an emerald, but with no agreeable or pleasing associations. It is a spot which no solitary schoolboy will ever visit, nor indeed would the unflinching believer in the popular nonsense of ghosts wish to pass it without a companion. Should we go find it? It is, under any circumstances, a gloomy and barren place, but when looked upon in connection with what we have just recited, it is lonely, desolate, and awful. It is sad. I don't know about awful. His ghost might still be there. I don't know. Every one of these stories has a new little place in Ireland that I think we need to take a field trip. We have a book. We have the internet. We can make a map. We'll go visit all the places in our book. For my 50th, should we do a tour of Ireland? It's just a couple years away. I think we should. Okay, in the comments, who wants to go to Ireland with me? It'd be fun. We'll do some serious research and find the best time of year to go. But I'd be in on it. I hope you guys would be too. Anyway, that is it for tonight, for this week's adventure. Time together. What have you. So I'm going to stop this here, get it uploaded, and hopefully by next week we will be back live, because I like doing the lives. But I love you guys. I will see you next week. Bye.